Hey, that's pretty bad. Of course, disclaimer, it's not that bad. This is a rebuilding team, a retooling team. We're talking about wins and lessons, baby. No losses over here. Although, honestly, a pretty bad one. 119-95. The Raptors lose against these Cleveland Cavaliers, who have now won 9 in a row. They've won like 17 of 19. They've been an absolute buzzsaw lately. They didn't even have anybody score over 20 points. They did, however, have, I believe, 8 guys in double digits, and a lot of them in the higher double digits, like Mobley at 17, Allen at 18. I guess you have Donovan Mitchell at 15 and 6. Pretty quiet game for him, but he didn't have to do much. Coco says, let's hear about the lessons. Keir Doyle says, 4 a.m. outside the Vatican. Let's hear some lessons, baby. That's a crazy place to listen to the Reaction podcast. I know William Liu had a tweet where he was watching, maybe it was the Amalfi Coast, and then it ended up being like one of those Action Bronson rap bars, and then Action Bronson ended up reading it on Pablo Torre's podcast, something like that. This is our equivalent, much smaller stakes. Pretty fun game if you're interested at all in the career of Scottie Barnes. 24 points, 10 boards, 10 assists, only 1 turnover. Pretty clinical tonight. He was like Atlas, holding up the Daegum offense on his own. It reminded me of Game of Thrones because he had that one possession on Mobley. It looked like he caved in his chest. That was kind of like a hallmark of tonight, is that Scottie was able to take guys like Allen and Mobley in isolation, dominate them completely. There was some like putting guys in jail and pick and roll, but a lot of it was just physical strength, and reminded me of the King and Ned when he was talking about the fight at the Trident. And I think it was, what's his face, Targaryen. He's like, crushed in his breastplate. Gods, I was strong then. Of course, he's a bigger guy at the end, not so strong, but it just reminded me of that. Like Scottie, the way he can go battle out there sometimes and just bully guys under the rim, really, it's super, super impressive. He was 9 of 15 from the floor tonight, 5 of 6 from the free throw line. Kept bullying his way into the lane. And keep in mind, the Raptors, they lost this game handily. They lost it by a whopping, like 119-95. We're talking about 24 points here. Scottie somehow came out as a +1 in this game. A +1. How you win those minutes like that, to me, absurd. Completely absurd. Hell of a game from him. And also, I said it when I was talking on Sportsnet before the draft. I was technically the one who broke the news about Kobe Bufkin and Gradey and their workouts with the Raptors. I've liked Gradey. The scouts I talked to really liked Gradey. It is rewarding in particular for me to watch Gradey come around. 44% from 3 over his last 12 games. The worm is turning, I believe. We're coming around, and some quick trigger stuff too. And even got fouled on one of his 3-point attempts, and it was just like shot prep. That's why I tweeted out, right? It's like shot prep, bring it, sling it. Very quick, chopping the feet, getting everything ready, slinging it, man. And this was a tough game for RJ. This was a tough game for Emmanuel. And honestly, a tough game for Abaji. A tough game for a lot of players. This was a game, I think I was talking to, S before tonight's game. And I was like, I don't think Emmanuel Quickly, this is a game for him. And it certainly wasn't. Here, we'll take a quick break. Goose says, can we talk about the B-Lob corner 3? Guess who drew it up already, Goose? Everyone tune in. Coach's cap is firmly on. All right. Igor Volkov says, Pastor Samson. I do not accept the title. We have it here. The baseline out of bounds play. The Raptors used to run this play for Fred VanVleet a ton, and it's very, very easy. And the reason why it's easy is because it's really hard to make a three-point shot sprinting into the corner. You have to be a certain level of three-point shooter to do so. We saw one tonight in Donovan Mitchell. Darius Garland can also do that, for example. Guess what? So can Gradey Dick. We're not seeing grenade DHOs or anything like that often, but we have the B-Lob. I call them B-Lobs, Keir Doyle. I'm sorry. You could call them blobs, but I like B-Lob for whatever. Here we go. So, easy peasy. Scottie is the inbounder right here. There we go. On the baseline for audio listeners. Gradey is in the middle of the floor. He's going to set a rip screen. This is basically a decoy. Kelly Olynyk is standing in front of Scottie Barnes, and he's going to rotate or just sprint over to Gradey's spot, and he's going to set a screen for him. Gradey's going to set his screen, sprint off of Kelly's screen. Oh my God, it's hard to do the inverse. Wait, my brain is breaking. Yes, there we go. He takes the route there, catches it, and cans a triple. Great, simple 3-point option. Great play. It's the easy stuff that works when you have players who can shoot it. Slomo says that is one funny looking lady you're drawing. Yeah, certainly. That'd be a funny look in anything. I'm not known for my my drawing or my art. Darko Stan says Picasso. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate it for sure. I didn't actually diagram the Ochai Agbaji first play where he scored on the baseline out of bounds play either, but we'll do more Ochai film once he has a better game. The 0 of 5 from 3, he was okay at the point of attack tonight, but you know, it wasn't his best game. And that's okay. It's tough, especially since like there were 2 turnovers that Kelly Olynyk had because Kelly and Ochai, the 2 guys who would make the most sense to have synergy together, weren't able to connect on 2 plays. Like Ochai cut at the wrong time both times, and Kelly was expecting him to come get the ball. And then there you have it, turnovers. More good Ochai stuff in the future, I think. Make some Wire references. I just finished season 1. Oh, man. I don't know. A Wire reference. Not from season 1. I feel like there's not that many quotables from season 1. Maybe we get to like season 4 or something like that. So keep watching GPWW. But anyway, the Raptors got shellacked in this game. 2 very big performances from Gradey Dick and Scottie Barnes. Everyone else kind of filling in. And it is notable that Jakob, 42% from the floor. Gary, 29% from the floor. Quickly, 40%. Kelly Olynyk, 40%. Ochai, 33%. Bruce Brown, 20%. Wara didn't hit a shot. Jonte missed his only 3. RJ shot 36%. It was Gradey and Scottie providing offensive pop. That is not a lot of players at the NBA level, as it turns out. And then on top of that, the Cavs are a team who carry advantage really well. They have elite shot makers at both of the guard positions, even in what wasn't a very good game for Garland or a big game for Donovan. They also, like, Mobley scored more than we're used to, but, like, 15 boards from Jarrett, 6 offensive, 11 boards from Mobley, 4 offensive, too many extra possessions. And this is a team that, like, they still got up threes. They made 14 of them in this game. They're winning that battle against the Raptors, right? The Raptors, you lose the 3-point battle by 15 points. You lose the rebounding battle. You lose battles all over the floor. What are you left with at the end of the game? You got to beat teams in the paint, and RJ's not having a big game. It's not going to happen. You want to beat teams in the paint, and Jakob's not having a big game. It's not going to happen. They lost minutes all over the floor. Their offense, not crisp. Scottie was out there by himself for a lot of this game. Gradey was like a flash in the pan and super fun. That jelly under the basket, he comes flying baseline. Woo, bop, wraps it around. That was super, super fun. And also, like, getting to the free throw line off of a 3-point shot, really hard closeout, a short closeout. These are great indicators about shooters. That's fantastic. I mean, quickly had a couple nice threes, but mostly we're looking at a guy who was going to struggle in this game because of how good the Cavs are at walling off the rim and the fact that the Cavs are a team that's going to give a lot of gap help too. They're going to force early pickups. And what happened when Quickly had early pickups? He's not able to play make to the level that he's supposed to be able to. He's not hitting. Like, I think his floaters are sitting at like 35% as a Raptor. They were 59% before joining the team. That's kind of, where it's at. Here's a fun question. I believe, yes, ND says, what is the chances of Gradey being the best shooter in franchise history? I feel like not good, right? I understand Fred didn't have a good finish as a Raptor. Like, the fan base had turned on him. His production had dipped. Like, the percentages went wonky. There's some people who think, he was fighting some nagging injuries. He said as much on the JJ Redick podcast last year. How much stock he put into that stuff, I don't know. But his history as a shooter with the Raptors in some of the biggest games in that finals run in just being a guy who can catch and shoot threes at a very high rate, and a guy who was definitely a capable pull-up shooter that was there. And then ahead of him, Kyle Lowry, the guy who scored 12 points in short order to start Game 6 of the NBA Finals, the guy who, if Damian Lillard and Steph Curry didn't exist, would be regarded as one of the best pull-up shooters. Logo Lowry perhaps could have became something meaningful, but he just didn't do it at quite the level that those guys did it. And Darko Stan says here, Kyle is like top 15 all time in threes. No, that's exactly it. Gradey, he has to shoot the hell out of the basketball starting now, starting next year, starting every year since, to get close to anything. And Slow-Mo adds, didn't Del Curry play for the Raptors? He certainly did. I wouldn't put Del above like Kyle or Fred just because Del, there's not enough volume there. And since we're doing it like, is Del a better shooter than Fred or Kyle? I don't know. But as a Raptor, it's got to be Kyle. GPWW says, where do you see Gradey's defense projecting / developing to? I talked about this with quite a few scouts at Summer League where, you get a lot of scouts congregating and you try and gather quotes and insights about players. And a lot of guys who watched a lot of Kansas thought that Gradey was a high-level team defender at Kansas. It's a smaller floor in college. He is pretty big for a guard / wing, and he has tremendous feel for the game. He makes great reads. That was something I talked about when I was at Summer League. It's what I talked to Gradey about after his first game, was that he was making really good reads. He was getting really, really close on steals, but he didn't get some steals, but you could tell he knew exactly what the offense was trying to do. He was just like a smidge too late. This kind of stuff should develop over time. His defensive playmaking should end up in a decent place. His size should help him. He can't be hunted as easily, and he's really young still. There's some strength, there's some conditioning, there's some cleaning up of footwork. There's a reason that like when I go and take pictures of like the players before the game and watch everybody, kind of like go through their reps and their workouts and try and talk to people, is you see like guys like Jonte and Gradey. Those are the guys who are getting defensive work. Everyone else is just going through the motions as an offensive player. Gradey and Jonte, for example, are the guys who like, hey, this is the kind of closeout we're looking for. This is the technique on the closeout we're looking for. In fact, you can see if Gradey allows a 3-point shot and there's a timeout called, Darko will like sprint out to him and he'll start saying like, no, this is the footwork we want to see. Like hand low, protect the cross, and like get that other hand high. And he's like, and we're chopping steps and we're angling because you're going to use the baseline as a defender. This is the kind of stuff I'll hear, pregame as well. That kind of stuff Gradey has to work on. There's some technique stuff. He's always going to be a slow foot speed guy. I don't think there's any indication that like it could get quicker. Will it get so quick that he's not below average relative to other NBA athletes? He'll probably always have slow feet. How does he make up for that? By being really good at reading the floor, doing his early work. Thad Young talks about this. OG talks about this. Being able to recognize when plays are happening that you've seen in the scouting report, kind of overlapping that with tendencies players have. What type of read do they like to make out of this spot on the floor? How can you cheat and beat guys to what they want to do? And even if you guess wrong, you make them go to a second option, which they're not as comfortable being able to produce with. That kind of stuff. And my confidence in Gradey being able to be a defender who can do that, I think is quite good. He's always going to struggle at some things, I reckon. But I feel pretty good about Gradey as like a team defender. As far as like being a guy who, is really good in isolation, it'll always be something he has to work uphill against. We can kind of use this to, I guess, segue into Kelly Olynyk, who I thought struggled immensely on defense, but was really intriguing and fun on offense. 4-10 isn't his best game, but, he goes 1 of 2 from downtown. I thought he made a lot of really nice decisions. The Raptors have been a team who, when they're kind of lost, they'll go to delay action because a lot of players grow up playing out of delay. It's a baseline type of offense to play. Whether you played for the Spurs or the Jazz or the Raptors, you're going to be running delay action. And when you're playing high school at Montverde or Oak Academy or wherever you went, you're going to be playing delay action sometimes, especially with 5-out offenses. So Kelly is able to introduce the Raptors to a lot of those sets. I think he's able to make like a lot of really fun reads. His 2 turnovers, of course, were associated with Ochai not making the best read as a as a cutter. And Kelly, he did the Pinoy step. Whoop, you go up with it in transition, made it. A couple nice drives to the rim as well. He's a guy who I think the more familiar he gets with the offense, considering how good a playmaker he is, we'll see stuff grow from there. And I do think that we're looking at a guy who into the future will fit very, very well with Scottie Barnes. I'm not at all worried about Kelly. Defensively, though, because that was the segue, I suppose, Kelly struggled. He left wide open gaps in pick and roll coverage. I think the Raptors asked him to play too high in pick and roll. Of course, that's what they want, though. And he wasn't able to provide pressure to the ball handlers. He also wasn't able to create difficult passing angles to rollers, and that meant that the Raptors on the bottom half were just way they didn't have anybody to like rotate and contest against like Jared Allen or Evan Mobley. And the Cavaliers, whether it was like Levert even or Garland or Mitchell, it was just easy. Like turn the corner. If Kelly steps up, there's either like a wide open pocket pass or you can just go over the top. Kelly did not make anybody take negative dribbles, really. Kelly was not able to provide a whole bunch of that stuff, but that's not really why he's here. He's here to help out offensively, and he's here certainly to allow Scottie to kind of blossom in those minutes together. And Kelly, I have to believe that he'll sign with the Raptors in the offseason. So this stuff is all kind of building, and he's not there to play pick and roll defense. He will be, and hopefully he finds a better middle ground, and hopefully Darko plays into that. Maybe you ask more of point of attack guys in relation to being like paired up with Kelly in those plays. Maybe you try and position Kelly. You have to do some pre-switching to get him out of those actions and have him kind of be on the weak side or something like that. Ask him to lean harder into rebounding. I'm not sure what the Raptors and Darko kind of opt to do, but there will be room for that kind of stuff to happen. It's we'll see. I like the offense though, and I think it's a super easy fit. The chat is currently arguing about Ochai Agbaji. There are some people who believe that he's cooked, he's trash. There are some people who are expressing optimism/patience. I would lean on the optimism/patience aspect of it, right? And that doesn't mean that I'll be correct at all. That doesn't mean that the optimistic take will be correct. It just means that I think players deserve optimism to some degree, like almost always. And especially since like the team already made the trade. It's happened. Ochai has come on and he's on the team, and he's like a very charismatic young man. He's been great so far. I've hardly talked to him at all, but yeah, it's Slomo says no one in this chat has watched him play other than this game. Probably not all the way true, but probably mostly true. I know like I've only seen I think like 6 Utah games this season. 6. 2 of those being Raptors games, right? So and Agbaji I saw like maybe like 2 or 3 times last season. I'm still quite unfamiliar with his game, and his point of attack defense, I need to see it stick against different coverages. As Darko told me, last night, that he's expecting to put him in a lot of different coverages. He's expecting to put him in a lot of different plays against a lot of different types of players, 1 through 4. We'll see. We really will. But this game, he went 0 for 5 from 3. There were a couple shouldn't have made that play on offense, overextended himself a couple times. We need to see more games. That's kind of how it is. Coco says, I think like with all the new players, we have to see how they all play together. Yeah, they haven't practiced together yet. I think there'll probably be a practice on the next couple days. They'll find one. But yeah, these guys, they need to get some work in. They need to find their spots. And Ochai is a guy who, he's going to need reps. Is he like a knock it out of the park? You're overjoyed and you say, this is why he's a lottery pick. No, I don't think that's what Ochai is going to be right away. He's struggled at things at the NBA level. His shot hasn't translated the same way that some people thought it might. But his point of attack defense, I think, has been better than people might have expected out of Kansas. And honestly, the Raptors traded what will probably end up being like the 27th to 30th overall first round pick in this draft. And Masai, I think, quite likes Ochai. And I think Ochai has some latent stuff that could pop. And that's where we're sitting Matt Hogg says, I'd personally rather roll the dice in the draft. Apparently, so does Danny Ainge, who is no fool. Yeah, I guess we'll see. I think Danny Ainge, he said he was willing to trade, what, 4 first-round picks back in the day? I like Danny Ainge is a really shrewd and good GM, but his word isn't law on every player. Not to say that, I guess, not to say that Ochai is going to prove all the haters wrong and he's going to pop off and you'll be like, this guy should have been a top 10 pick in that draft. And it's going to be inherent the moment he joins there. Um, I just think that Ochai, they're taking a swing on him. Masai, I was at the press conference after all that kind of stuff happened, and he was like, I don't feel like we're using all the picks we have this year. And guess what? They traded one away. Now this is the situation. But Ochai, we got 19 minutes. He made a couple layups. We'll see what happens. At worst, I think they have a little bit more punch at the point of attack. Would it have been good if Dennis Smith Jr. was actually included in the Dennis Schroeder trade? Yeah, that would have been great. But rolling the dice, a team that's losing games by 24 points and 38 points and 26 points over the last handful of however long, guys deserve to have a leash to try things out. That's where we're at. Yeah. Solmo says the second round Detroit pick is more valuable than the 29th pick. Because of money implications and the low hit rates of those picks, I think front office members would probably agree with you. However, the 29th pick or like the Malachi Flynn pick or whatever, or the 28th pick, it could have been Jaden McDaniels instead of like Xavier Tillman or something like that, right? So it's kind of about what you do with it. But obviously, it's more advantageous for teams to have like an early second rounder because of the contract implications for those players instead of a first rounder. I get what you're saying, Slomo. Yeah, let's talk about Bruce Brown, who I think struggled once again. I'm waiting for it, man. I talked to Caitlin Cooper. We both did a bunch of coverage for her Patreon and for Raptors Republic right after, the trade had happened with Pascal, and she cautioned me about Bruce Brown's the state of his point of attack defense. It certainly hasn't been there. The team concept defense, I think, has not been strong either. He's a minus 21 tonight. He goes 1 for 5. His play has been so poor. It really has been a tough level of play that he went 5 for 13, and everybody, even in the media room, I saw on Twitter, I seen in the Raptors Republic comment section, the YouTube comment section, everyone's like, oh, nice Bruce game, 38% from the field. It's been tough for Bruce. He is a guy who kind of similar to, how Ben Simmons, when he makes his return after not playing for so long, Ben Simmons is a player who everything he succeeds at is about physicality and reading the game tremendously well. He can't just go out there, be a good shooter, let the ball find him and make some shots. Teams are going to sag off of him, make him navigate the floor with a live dribble and make really inspired passing reads. It takes a long time for him to get up to speed. Bruce is a guy who has not shot the three well. Bruce is a guy who teams will sag off of. Bruce is a guy who's not playing around all the talent that he has in the past. So he hasn't been able to kind of mix it up in the middle of the floor. He hasn't been able to be a guy who multiplies advantages because there's not that many advantages being created. It makes sense that the first game he played, he was at his best playing off of Scottie Barnes pick and rolls, whether he was on ball or off of it, sliding against the two defenders who were seeing Scottie, finding opening space as a scorer or as a guy who's going to draw in the defense, kick to the corner, that kind of stuff. Has that been happening so much lately? No, I think that the Raptors have put him in kind of a spot up situation. And also they've asked him to be on ball a fair bit. And he's definitely struggled in that role. And that's the Bruce Brown stuff. He's a much better player than what he's shown. And he's, as Aubrey Losoho says, Bruce is probably an example of a guy whose value is dependent on the context. Yeah, context, especially as the league, the talent in the league has elevated so much over time. You see that context can have really, really drastic impact on players and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. And Bruce, I think, fits in that. GPWW says, want to talk about RJ's shot. It's broken. He was 0 of 2 from 3 tonight. I think he's shooting after this game because he was 39% as a Raptor before it. It will be like maybe like 38.5 after this game. That's not so bad. He's not supposed to be a high volume 3-point shooter. RJ struggled in this game because he was forcing things on the drive. He missed a couple shots that he usually makes, and he just had turnovers, like live ball turnovers, and also like swipe downs got him as he was driving in. The same way that, this was a tough game for Emmanuel Quickly because the paint is going to be walled off and Cleveland is a strong defense and Cleveland knows how to take away the rim. RJ is going against a wall there. And there's been some games where his floater game has been really strong. I don't think that's the strength of his game. I think he's a guy who's supposed to punish and break through the last wall of defense and finish at the glass. He's been great at that as a Raptor. 63% true shooting, 21 points per game, 7 boards, 4 assists, all that kind of stuff. He's been big time offensively. Defensively, he's definitely struggled. Offensively, he's not a perfect player, but I think RJ has like been tremendous as a Raptor, especially on the offensive end. And tonight was an off night. I don't think that this was I don't think that this is an indicator of like the other shoe dropping or like, oh, this is the start. RJ was questionable before even tonight with knee swelling, right? So he pushed to play tonight and all that kind of stuff. So RJ, not his best game, certainly. GPWW says his shot doesn't matter as much now. There are other shooters around him. Some shooters, yes. And like that's kind of the context, right? But I don't want to undercut RJ by saying like, well, he has shooters around him because like Scottie doesn't really get to the rim off a live dribble that much. IQ definitely doesn't. Gary definitely doesn't. Jakob Poeltl is completely dependent on other players. Kelly won't. Ochai won't. Gradey won't. Bruce Brown won't. So in the same way that like you would say, well, RJ benefits from those guys shooting, those guys get shots because RJ is the best driver on the team and has been a really impressive driver for the Raptors. It's symbiotic, as most things are. And the Raptors, I don't think, are good enough as a team to start like excising players and be like, no, I don't think you fit the idea of this team because we're building a certain level. It's like the Raptors are just trying to get through games. They need to see, a bunch of different guys develop a bunch of different things. And RJ is young enough and on contract long enough and doing enough good things now that you can kind of just like, we'll see. Maybe he tweaks his shot in the summer. I don't know if he's still with Drew Hanlon. I don't know what's going on with it, but like maybe he tweaks it. Maybe it comes back better. Maybe he's only ever a catch and shoot guy. I don't know. GPWW says we need whatever talent we can get. You're on the exact same page as me. And Hoop Goose says I would like to see the Raps increase their 3-point rate in general. Yeah, 31 attempts is maybe not so much. And I think Emmanuel Quickly is the key to that 3-point rate. I talked about this, when he first came over and because I've watched all of I'm working on a big Emmanuel piece. I need quotes for it and I'm just sorting out all the film as I, often do with these big pieces. And I need to talk to more scouts about it and like shot doctors, etc. But I wondered about Emmanuel's hesitancy to pull up going left and the fact that he rarely ever does it and that teams are pushing him left because that's his weak hand on closeouts, on like pick and roll coverages. And it's been very, very effective at suppressing his 3-point rate. So that's like tough from Emmanuel's point of view. To see him take 4 3-point attempts in the game, not enough. And if he's going to be like at his style of play, Emmanuel, if he's going to be completely dependent on guys getting him the ball where he can take a 3-point shot, that's not good enough. He needs to be a live dribble 3-point shooter. And he has been in the past. It's just teams are scheming for him. He went up the totem pole and teams are scheming for him and pushing him left more often. Goose will understand this, but it's kind of like Jamal Murray wasn't able to be game planned this way. But there's a famous tweet about, I found this clever little trick to guard Jamal Murray that the Lakers can use. And it made it sound like it was this highbrow defensive schematic, but it was just pushing him left, which is, maybe the oldest trick in the book, push a guy to his weak hand. And Jamal killed him because Jamal can pull up going left because Jamal is a wizard with the ball and an incredible shooter. And Emmanuel isn't there as a Kentucky guard. He's not there yet. there's some stuff that Emmanuel needs to figure out as the lead guard to make sure he keeps getting that 3-point attempt rate up because we need it booming, man. You know, Slomo says would like to see IQ taking 10 3-point attempts per game. Yeah, that's what Darko said. Give us 10. I think he had 10 last night, right? Or 11? 9? I think it was 9. Keep letting it rip, man. Yeah. ND says that guy got killed on Twitter for that tweet. He certainly did. It was not as clever a wrinkle as as they thought, obviously. Jay Kennedy Carter, did you mention the Gradey Dick sick reverse layup? Not only did I mention it, I reenacted it on screen. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. What else haven't we talked about yet? I guess just to revisit the defense overall in this game. We talked about pick and roll coverages, but also this was a game where, I talked to Jakob about this last night. We were talking about how quick the nail help was and how much more the guys were playing in the gaps, and that was really helpful to the Raptors defense. Second night of a back-to-back, maybe it's not as effective. And you don't want to just wave it away as oh, it's the second night of a back-to-back. Suddenly, losing by 25 points is totally, or 24 points is totally okay. It's a big deficit, but the Cavs are really good. It is the second night of a back-to-back, and the Raptors are still in flux. They need to practice together, and they need to do all this kind of stuff. And we'll see. They were susceptible to cuts. They were susceptible to offensive rebounds. They were susceptible to relocation. They were susceptible to live dribble drives. The pick and roll coverage was just the start of it. Coco says, I hate that the Cavs are so good. I like quite a few players on the Cavs. There are maybe there's 28 teams in the league that I really like. So it's not particularly unique that I like the Cavs, but yeah, I do like that team. I really like Donovan and Darius. Darius, I think, is one of the smartest. His feel for the game is so good in that backcourt. Even he doesn't perform that well against the Raptors all that often, to be quite honest with you. Yeah. GPWW says, is it alarming the defense has been unorganized for what seems like the whole season, or is it a result of the roster changes? I think that the Raptors, you always can be better. You really can. But the Raptors have been so up against it, as far as turbulence this season, as far as just the transition from where they were, which wasn't even that good for what it's worth, but transitioning to a lower level of team, that's affected the defense a ton. And also, I know Emmanuel Quickly on the Knicks was somebody who had the best on-offs of any player there. He was a plus-minus king, and a lot of that was shown in the defensive plus-minus. I think that all the Knicks people I talked to, as far as Emmanuel's defense, they were yeah, I don't expect lots at the point of attack, but his off-ball defense is really good, really fun. I think that when the framework of the Knicks defense was no longer there, you could see Emmanuel wasn't as strong off ball. He needs to, kind of exist in that, all that kind of stuff. Neil B calls me a positive company man. Aubrey Los Ojos says, Samson, you're just a positive guy, it seems. I like one of those. I resent the other. How am I going to be the independent media and still get the company man tag? I don't even get the company man salary. Come on, guys. Can't I be the little guy for a little while longer before I get the bag somewhere? Please, Neil. I'm begging you, Neil. Anyway, just cracking jokes. But yeah, the Raptors defense, it just hasn't been very good. And they're a team that obviously has some good defenders on the team. I think Jakob is obviously a positive defender. Scottie, if anybody at this point in time tries to talk you into well, no, he's not as good as X or Y or whatever, Scottie's going out there and he's creating it used to be that Scottie was versatile for the sake of being versatile through his first 2 seasons. Now he is versatile with some bite. And that bite has manifested in insane defensive playmaking. You look at tonight, a block and a steal. And a block and a steal for a forward or a wing player is a lot. And for him, it's not. That's he's been immense on that end. Now, is he overtasked sometimes? Certainly, he is overtasked. Has he gotten better at the things he's been overtasked in the past relative to now? Yeah. ND says Scottie's defensive portfolio has expanded so much, man. That's correct. I think that Scottie is better at giving guys a buffer. Like we saw last night, it was against who was he guarding? The quick guard. He was guarding up on him, and he got called for a blocking foul because he stepped up on him. And it's like, okay, maybe you shouldn't step up on him. You don't need to step up on him. It might not be the best idea for you to step up on him. It was Jalen Green. That's who it was. You don't need to step up on Jalen Green and get a blocking foul, right? You don't need to do that kind of stuff. Use your length as a buffer. And that is something he struggled with because he could step up on and lock guys up at the college level. But NBA guards are not Gardner Webb guards. It's a lot harder to contain the athletes at the guard position in the NBA. He slowly has made that change to allow for more of a buffer, to use his length and to recover into spots more often, to put himself in a playmaking position rather than like an aggressive stance on guys. And it's something that he's worked on. It's something he's gotten a lot better at, and it's something that I've really enjoyed seeing him like improve at. And then obviously being the backline sweeper is just been immense. He like his playmaking has been absurd. His playmaking has been awesome, and that utility to like shore up some of their backline stuff will allow them in the future to get kind of like freaky and interesting with the rest of their, I guess, makeup as roster context and roster building and all that kind of stuff. I guess we will see. But overall, a pretty poor game with, I think a lot of upsides, a lot of really interesting performances. Not the best from RJ. In a lot of performances, we've expected to see better things from RJ, and it just didn't happen tonight. Awesome Scottie performance. I thought like the live dribble stuff was really fun. I think that he had a great nose for the rim in this game, not only as like a live dribble guy, but also a guy who's like going to the bully drives, using his back to the basket, punishing a guy like Mobley. That's been easy for him. Punishing a guy like Jared Allen has vexed him at times. He got the better of him a couple times in this game. That's awesome. Being patient, working his way downhill in pick and rolls, spraying the ball over the court, leading to layups, leading to corner threes. Well done to Scottie there. And then Gradey, I loved Gradey's game in this one. Huge fan of it. I wonder, S will have the breakdown tomorrow morning, as he always does after these games. So I hope he focuses on Gradey to some degree. I'm writing like 4 different pieces right now, and I don't know which one is going to come out first. A lot of them will require work over the course of the All-Star break. But yeah, cool stuff. Some cool stuff in this game in what was like a pretty hapless performance, but second night of a back-to-back, against a very good Cavs team. Cosmo says, I'm still kind of out on RJ long-term as a starter. It just feels so disjointed from everyone else. I think, there's a certain portion of the fan base that, they're like, Star J, he's a star going forward. I'm not sure if he will be a star. I've really liked his performances thus far as a Raptor. I think it's kind of made people around the league kind of like take a step back and reevaluate where he is, and that's all good. But he was so far removed from like stardom that this step has just kind of turned him into like an intriguing and good starter. And we wonder what this looks like in different contexts. You wonder what this looks like on a winning team and all that kind of stuff. We'll see. I can't be out on him as a starter just yet because he's really young. He's starting now, and he deserves a chance to grow his game the same way. Like, he's younger than Emmanuel Quickley, right? And Emmanuel Quickley isn't good enough to be a starting guard on a lot of teams in the NBA. Is Emmanuel Quickley getting that chance on the Raptors? Yes. And just because Emmanuel Quickley hasn't gotten a paycheck yet doesn't mean that his stardom is more viable in the on-court stuff than RJ's is. Well, it probably is, but I don't think either of them necessarily end up as stars. But just like the money shouldn't cloud the RJ stuff that much. I think RJ definitely is a guy who deserves reps and optimism. And Darko Stan says you just can't have a negative point of attack guy beside Gradey and Scottie long-term on the wing. Yeah, that's fine. That's like, roster building, that kind of stuff, contextual stuff. Yeah, we have an awesome comment here. Top Shot Tesla donates $5. Thank you very much, Top Shot Tesla, for the $5 and an excellent joke. S is the real company, man. Got that Sun Life bag. Seeing this dude everywhere. Support independent media. More cuts at Bell this week. Hashtag consolidation. Yeah. I yeah. S definitely. The company, man. The industry plant. Now these are jokes. Please do not go label him as an industry plant. Only if you know him and you get to make that joke. Otherwise, it's a pretty. It's not a fun charge to get. I'm sure, unless you are an industry plant, then seek them out, shame them. Um, yeah, that's a funny little thing. Yeah, but agreed. Support independent media. You can support independent media right now, listeners, by liking this video for free. I notice after a podcast, there's usually like 30 or 40 likes. There's usually like around like the top concurrent viewers after a win can get between like 400, 500. In a loss, usually we're looking at like 200. We can do better than 30 or 40. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. We can do better than 30 or 40. Fun game in some respects. I'm kind of hitting some of the same beats. S Corp works out. Yes, that's from Royal Subjects. I just, it's a very interesting makeup for the team when you have to consider RJ, how he fits in going forward. If you think that's a six-man role, that's totally fine. And half of the projection, half of the fun in being a fan is like doing the projection, wondering what that looks like, and the 2Kification of like going into GM mode and building out your roster and wondering how these things look. It is interesting. Kind of to that point, ND says, I'm not on Star J. I just don't see him as a long-term starter. Great six-man, though. Think it's hard to be an impactful starter wing if you can't shoot or defend. Yeah, I don't think he's a complete non-shooter. I think maybe that might be, especially at his age, that might be a little early. A lot of like wings / guards, they figure out the jump shot, after where RJ is currently, or they see upticks in it. Now, is he a movement shooter? Definitely not. Is he going to be a pull-up three-point shooter? No. But it might be passable into the future. And defense we'll also see as well. The defense isn't good right now, but everybody is losing defensively on the Raptors right now. And even RJ was a guy who could exist in strong defenses in the Knicks, which is meaningful. It's to me it's meaningful if somebody can exist in those places. Of course, like that's like the Steph Curry thing, right? When the Golden State Warriors were really good defenses, Steph's on-offs defensively, he could actually improve their defense. Why? He could play to a role within that context, and he could use his brain a little bit, while other guys used their bodies a lot, and they all played within, the framework of it, and they all tried to play like five men on a string. Draymond did a lot of cleaning up. But then when the Warriors aren't good, you see that once that context is gone, Steph becomes a really big negative. And that ability to exist in the healthy framework is really impressive. Well, it's not. I'm overselling it. It's not really impressive. It's meaningful. The fact that Emmanuel quickly could, the fact that RJ could, is meaningful. We know that Scottie can. Scottie has been part of really strong stretches defensively, and Scottie definitely can. These things, I think, are meaningful. Now, does that mean that those three, with Jakob and, whether it's Gary or Gradey in the future, does that mean they can create a good defensive hub? I'm not so sure. And I understand why people are like, okay, well, if you look at Gradey's game tonight, you look at Gradey's overall feel for the game, you want that shooter. They just spent a lottery pick on him. You have to sort him out as like, this guy will be part of the future. And if Gradey hits on a lot of the interesting parts of his game, I think he becomes a really strong starter in the NBA. That's my fingers are crossed for that. And that sounds probably more intriguing than like RJ. And Emmanuel quickly, I guess everybody wants to hope and dream on a point guard, right? Louis Atzman and I did that big podcast after he joined the team, and we talked about his stardom. And I said, I don't think he'll be a star point guard. It's so hard to be a star point guard. You have to be so good at so many things. Darius Garland was an all-star 2 years ago. He might never, ever be an all-star again, honestly. And he's so damn good. Yeah. It's interesting team building going forward. It's tough to be a star in the NBA, obviously. And, you come out, you play a Cavs team that has a little bit of star power on it, but just has a lot of really strong players who played their role super well. Sam Merrill cashing triples like crazy. Man, he has a quick trigger. And especially for a guy who his he collects the ball so far outside of his body, right? Like, he's not close. Steph is a guy who's really close to his body, and, like, there's a bit of a dip sometimes that he can eliminate if he wants. But the fact that Merrill catches so far out of his body and doesn't necessarily bring it back in, keeps it outside. I'm, like, always impressed at guys who shoot out in front of their body like that. And, of course, Tyrese Halliburton is like that too, although he has a lower pickup point, or sorry, higher pickup point than Sam Merrill. Yabut says Lowry signing with 76ers. Wow, cool. He gets to go home. I don't have like big thoughts on that right now, but just like Kyle has talked about Philly in a very loving way for a long, long time. And he obviously loves that city and he's going back there. I don't think it's going to be super meaningful for like the play because I don't happen to think Embiid is going to factor into the playoff situation. And if he does, I might raise an eyebrow at how quickly he's coming back, to be quite honest. We'll see. But I'm glad, Kyle gets to go home. I know he chose Miami and all the golf there and the Heat culture and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Alfonso Nicholas says, still not impressed with Jakob. Maybe they can swing for a center or a power forward in the offseason. I I probably come away more positive on Jakob than you do, Alfonso. But if they do want to swing for a center, there will be a guy. I'll ask you, Alfonso. Feel free to respond in chat. If Nicholas Claxton is a guy you're interested in, the Raptors have recently, because of the trade deadline and prior to it, have opened up a lot of money this offseason. They can be players, and does that mean they're players like they can go get the guy? Does that mean they're overpaying guys to come to Toronto, but they can afford to overpay them? They're just trying to get good players in house and work from there. I don't know how it's going to shake out, but they will have some money. Claxton might be a guy they can go after. You know, there are some people who think like you don't want to go after mid-tier centers. And I think I understand that sometimes. I think mid-tier centers can be really important for rebuilding teams. I think mid-tier centers can be maybe a bit of a roadblock for teams that want to contend or something like that. Mid-tier centers like Jakob or like Steven Adams or anything like that. I think that they can help guys get really meaningful reps to see defensive responses. They can show you how to play the proper way, all that kind of stuff. But also, there are guys like Hartenstein who are really strong facsimiles of like Jakob and Steven Adams. Like Hartenstein has been doing what those guys do, like 85-90% of it for just so much less money. ND says, I know Nick Claxton is the hot name and we had interest before, but I'm just not sure if he fits Darko's system. Stevie says, I like a guy like Clax. Don't need a ton of offense coming from the 5. And then Nesta says, adding a vertical lob outlet for the guards can only help. So this is something I've talked about quite a bit. I'm in the same group as ND. I like Nick Claxton a lot. Watch how Emmanuel Quickley creates offense. Watch how RJ Barrett creates offense. Watch how Scottie Barnes creates offense. These guys are way more likely to wrap pass, to bounce pass, or to high-low pass than they are to throw a lob. Now, there hasn't been that many lob guys, but it just fits better in their game. And Emmanuel Quickley, we can go back to how he played in New York. He had the synergy, the dynamism with Hartenstein, the ground-bound center. He did not have it with Mitchell Robinson, and neither did RJ Barrett, really. And Scottie Barnes, I think, is a guy who you can utilize his high-low passing with a big man who will seal and create space by carving out with screens on the inside. I think Nick Claxton is not as clean a fit offensively as we might hope. And I think he's probably a worse fit offensively than Jakob. Defensively, Claxton can definitely give you a little bit more versatility. I think Claxton can definitely give you a higher outcome on that end of the floor. So it's a give and take. And Claxton will probably be more expensive than Jakob. And the Raptors would have to do some work to move Jakob, all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. But I don't think the offensive fit is as clean with Claxton. Would be very happy to be wrong if they somehow get Claxton on the team and they start doing those little push lobs, quickly somehow develops like that Harden-esque thing where he can hang and he doesn't know yet. He's already jumped, but he doesn't know if it's going to be the floater or the push lob. You know, that's like a hell of a move that I don't think he has in his game. But yeah, GPWW says Hartenstein is not the answer. No, I don't mean that Hartenstein is the answer. What I'm trying to say is that Hartenstein gives you an example of certain types of reps that quickly has benefited from. And it's a really good, really informative to kind of look at that partnership, the relationship there, and the one with Mitchell Robinson, I think. Kier Doyle says, you think Claxton will be north of 20 million? Interesting. I think he could, but he might just be around Jakob. He'll probably like be around Jakob. Maybe I spoke a little out of turn. He could definitely get north of 20. I wouldn't be surprised to see like 485 or 490, honestly. We'll see how it goes. Kier Doyle says, curious what you think IQ's RFA number will be given his quote unquote struggles with an expanded role so far. Yeah, I think IQ probably from the moment he got traded to the Raptors was sitting between like 22 and 32. And how it goes will affect how the Raptors view him, how the league perceives him. And you could end up at like 22, like 4 years 88 or like 4 years 90 or something like that. Could be in that. Could go 4 years 100. If he like took the starting role and just like popped the hell off and another team looked over there and said, we really, really want to get that, we really want to get that, like that RFA. We're going to sign a big old paycheck and send it over there and see if you match. That might have happened. I don't know if anybody's going to sign that big, big bag for him. So we'll see. But yeah, GPWW says, we need vertical spacing, LOL. I need to see some athletes. War's missed poster was the only time I've seen anyone outside of Scottie dunk on someone. Well, dunking isn't necessarily vertical spacing, right? Like RJ can dunk. RJ dunks fairly frequently. And vertical spacing is more so in the vein of like Anthony Davis, where you're talking about a very large catch radius. You're talking about a guy who's definitely going to like, you can throw it to a lot of different areas on the court. He'll go up and get it. Koloko was a really good vertical spacer. But Koloko was also a guy who I think he only caught like 6 lobs on the whole season last year, from what I had seen. And also was a guy who he finished a lot of plays after catching on the bounce. And also like vertical spacing can be about finishing. But as far as in the context of working off of a playmaker in the pick and roll, it's usually about your catch radius and kind of playing to the lob. And Jakob Poeltl is a fantastic pick and roll dive man. And he doesn't need the vertical spacing. And the way that, the players get him the ball on the bounce is definitely something that benefits the guards rather than, I think, a guy who's going up for lobs, just to be quite honest with you. But that could change. Maybe we just haven't seen enough of these guys making reads to vertical spacers, let's say, guys with big catch radiuses. We'll see. ND says thoughts on overpay for Pat Will trying to steal him from the Bulls. Probably not. I don't really see that happening, to be quite honest with you. And yeah, and Cosmo says Koloko struggled finishing at the rim last year. He certainly did. Yep, big time. A lot of missed stuff. Lots of missed stuff. I hope he comes back to the NBA. I hope he sorts out his health and finds his way back to the league. There are players who have done it with what he is currently going through. So yeah. Ian McKay says, I'd like to see Koloko back if he is cleared to play. Fits a long-term need, and I liked what he showed. Certainly. I liked a lot of what Koloko showed, for sure. And Grandmaster416 says, Gradey is transfer replacement upgrade. I think that Gradey will be an upgrade. He's not currently an upgrade. Gradey is a better player still, but probably not really if Gradey keeps shooting. He's 44% from 3 over his last 12 games. I'm paying close attention. I really liked him out of the draft. Was surprised the Raptors got him at 13, but I heard his draft workouts didn't go that well, which I've talked about in, ad nauseum on this podcast before, so I won't rehash that. But if Gradey starts turning it up, the road to being better than Gary Trent Jr. is a pretty short one, to be quite honest with you, because Gary has struggled at a lot of things, and he hasn't elevated a lot of aspects of his game that I think most people would want him to, and aspects of his game that really popped off, for example, in 2021-22, some of that might have been pretty heavy variance, and he earned a defensive reputation very quickly that I, at the time, was not necessarily buying, and was probably correct not to buy. So, yeah. Darko Stan says, "Are we sure Gary is better?" Gary's better right now. I'll say that, but it's not about necessarily being better. It's about investing into Grady's future, the team's future. And as I said, the road to being better than Gary is a short one, and becoming a strong starter in the NBA. I think that Grady has a chance at it, which is a pretty big deal at the 13th pick. And the fact that he will be like a sizable shooter playing next to Scottie Barnes, the implication is that pretty huge. ND says Grady or GTJ defensively right now. It's Gary. Now I understand, like, we're dealing with different expectations. So Grady is currently outperforming expectations. Gary's currently underperforming, certainly. But I still think Gary's better there right now. But by how much? I guess we'll see. Nesta says over under on games until Grady takes Gary's starting spot. Man, I, I wonder if it'll happen this season. Because Grady has already started a game. So it can't be like the first game he starts. When he starts consistently starting, I bet it happens next year. That's what I'll say. Gary, I feel like the Raptors are still going to give him minutes in the starting spot. Like, go see if you can do it. Hit some threes. Coco says Samson wagers again. What do you mean? I'm not wagering. I'm not putting anything up. I'm just trying to predict outcomes. There's no wager here. Nothing like that. Come on now. Ian McKay referencing something that came to my mind. Quote, I found it pretty funny when Gary was like fourth on the Defensive Player of the Year ladder early in 2021-22 when he was leading the league in steals. End quote. Yes, ridiculous. I don't know who puts together the Defensive Player of the Year ladder, but like, shame on you for that. Shame on you. Why would you do that? Ridiculous. That's what I said at the time. I can't believe that that was ever a thing. That was something that season Gary did get a lot of steals, but I was, talking to friends who work for Sports Info Solutions, which is a private data collecting company that works with NBA teams and sells data and all that kind of stuff. They go and they like track stuff, and they track unique stats. And one of the stats they tracked was like who gambles the most and how often do teams give up points when they gamble. And Gary was second in the full season. He was second. Like, the steals are nice, but you're not hitting on enough of them, man. Like, you need to cool it. And he got rewarded for the steals because not only was he on the Defensive Player of the Year ladder, but Nick Nurse was coming out all the time being like, well, if he wants to be part of the future, he's got to get 4 steals a game. I was like, what? Why are you indulging this play? It doesn't bear out in the numbers. And when you watch the film, it doesn't necessarily bear out either. I understand, like, there's this ethos of like ball pressure, hurried stuff. But as this is kind of what Lewis and I talked about, when we're looking at an NBA that's changing, and the Raptors used to be a team that were predicated on moving the ball into role players' hands and then watching role players struggle with a live dribble or to make progressive reads. The level of role players has elevated very quickly in the NBA. And a lot of them can make plays with a live dribble. And a lot of them can make progressive reads. And if you blow up your defense trying to provide ball pressure, it can get pretty gnarly. Pretty gnarly. Which actually did happen a little bit with these Cavs. Like, Max Strus, 14 points, 7 assists. Great. Like, Karis LeVert, 13 points, 5 assists. Isaac Okoro had 12 and 4. Like, these guys will tear you apart. Tertiary NBA players, ancillary NBA players, they can still make plays. Nesta says, how is Georges Niang still hanging on the league? Hit threes, man. He was 5 of 8 from the floor tonight, 3 of 5 from downtown. Funny thing. Trey, my wonderful co-host, dear friend, he had a viral tweet where it was, I think Georges Niang was talking about Ben Simmons or something. And then Trey tweeted, like, we need a points per game threshold on shit talking or something. And it kind of is a big time tweet. And I think he turned off the mentions on that because he didn't want to see people talking trash back to him. But I was like, oh, that's a funny tweet. I get it. So that's the connect from this podcast to Georges Nang. Yabut says, is Jonte injured at all? Hardly got playtime behind Yak and Kelly. Nope. Jonte isn't injured. He just, you kind of have the answer in that comment. Like, Yak and Kelly are both there. Jakob plays 21 minutes. Kelly plays 22. That leaves, 4 other minutes at center? Yabut also says, can Kelly play power forward with the Raps? I think Kelly can play power forward with the Raps. I think that we'll see that over the next. I talked about that after, probably for about like 2 or 3 minutes on last night's. I don't know. It feels weird to call them episodes, but podcast episode, whatever the hell you want to call it. That feels like a podcast. I thought I was going to be done at like 38 minutes. It's already been an hour. Daggone, man. I might not be here for the game on the 12th. I arrive in Mexico on the 12th. So I got to talk to Raptors Republic. You guys might get somebody to step in for me on the 12th. That might be kind of fun. I think I'll be here post Raptors game with Caitlin because it'll be Raptors versus Pacers. I think. So, that might be fun, but I might not be here after the game on the 12th. We'll see. I'll try and get Kai or something like that. GPWW says, enjoy your vacation. It's like a vacation in that I'm going somewhere, but it's not like a vacation in that I will be working. I know you're saying take your time off, self-care. There are some things about this job that seem like maybe you're like, oh, I don't know. It's not a vacation. I'll just be working from Mexico and I'll get to see my dog again. For those who don't know, I'll give the background information. Sure. Welcome to my life a little bit. So I got a dog with a girl in Mexico. I'm no longer with that girl. We're still on very good terms. And I'll be taking care of that dog in Mexico while working. And I'll also get to be in Mexico again after living in Mexico for some time. He's the best little dog. He's a Chihuahua and a Dachshund. He's a chubby little guy named Poe. And you guys will see him on some podcasts. But I will be podcasting from there, provided that the Wi-Fi is good enough, which it should be. Okay, that's enough personal talk. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. Like the video on your way out. I think I said that prompt 30 minutes ago, so it's been long enough for another one. If you have the means and the want to subscribe over at Raptors Republic, that's how we keep it, alive. That's how we do it over there. That's how we pay people. That's how we stay alive as an independent media, is the subscriber base. If you have the means and the want, feel free. I appreciate it a ton. Anybody who subscribes is a hero in my book. And don't worry, I embody this same ethic. The people whose work I enjoy, I subscribe to as well. It's not just, taking from people. I also try to embody that ethic by supporting people the same way. If you want to do that, there's also free stuff like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that good stuff. And stay tuned. In like probably 10 hours, S will have a video with, film breakdown, quotes, insights. His videos are just so fantastic. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. And I'll have a video essay or two coming in the next few days and a couple articles, I think. So stay tuned. Top Shot Tesla donates $5. Thank you very much. Says, quote, enjoy the time away. I can't believe you're flying first class. Raps Republic subs going up. Yeah, I've never flown first class in my life. I wonder what that would be like. I wish I did. I obviously couldn't afford it. But when I flew to New Zealand, the room on that plane is like a 17-hour flight from Dallas to Sydney before I connected going to Auckland. Dog. Nuts. I had good seat buddies. Thank God. Not a lot of room for 17 hours, though. Gnarly business. All right. Thanks, everybody. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.